This war is real. Fighting is everything. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Tempt not the righteous man to draw his sword. Conviction, righteousness, ruthlessness. To understand tolerance, you have to understand the line of intolerance. War is the teacher, soldiers are the students. They become the bards of war. Over this past year, we've been blessed to have many significant influencer voices join this channel for interviews, from General Flynn to Archbishop Vigano to Jim Pugh. And now we have the pleasure of having Juan O'Savin join us for an amazing discussion on the origins and the challenges that we face as we disassemble and confront one of the greatest evils known to man, which we call the Cabal. So please join me for part 2 of Juan O'Savin Unplugged. At the center of this fight is the military in one way or another. And you mentioned the five-sided part of the Pentagon, and in one way or another now they are kind of at the center of all of this by, if you want to say, their allegiance or vote to who's going to be president. What would be your thoughts on that whole direction and where we are right now?
Well, let me see if I understood the question correctly. What you're asking me is, is the military the key to saving the country? If the policing has become unable to control the federal government at the local and state level, if the Congress and the states have been unable to control themselves or to control the federal government, if it's out of control, if the alligator's loose and now it's broken down the screen door and it's threatening to break into the kitchen, who's going to protect us from this monster? If it's out of control, it's a 12-foot alligator now, and you're not, mom is not going to be able to beat it out of the kitchen with the broom. Who's going to protect us? Is it the police officer with a sidearm? Is it somebody internal, if they even have the authority, or is it something else? And if I understand the question correctly, what I've said to other audiences is that at this point in time, we've seen in this national drama from the election forward that vote fraud has been sanctioned. It's okay. That even with the knowledge and understanding that there's been manipulation of lying facts, digital Pearl Harbor, America was attacked by a digital Pearl Harbor to take control of the country in this vote fraud. That fraud came from foreign powers, a bunch of NATO countries working together, people collusively working from our own intelligence agencies inside CIA, along with British MI6 and MI5, and Mossad and other intelligence agencies working together to capture America by picking its leaders through a fraudulent vote, to put their Manchurian candidates into power over America, to spend our money their way for their advantage, to control America, the alligator running the kitchen. So with that in mind, how are we going to stop that? How can we stop it? Are you going to do it with citizens with pitchforks? Are you going to do it even with law enforcement from within the states? Is it possible for them to stop this federal monster, this federal alligator, from tearing the whole house apart from the inside out? And it's been my contention that at this point in time, that's not possible. That Congress, when it had a chance to correct and to administrate, to take control of a fraudulent vote and outcomes, failed both before and after the fact to protect America from this external threat. enemies foreign, who conspired together to manipulate the vote in America through the Dominion vote machines, which, by the way, Dominion countries, that's a British term. Even the name of the machine denotes its authorship and origins. This Dominion system. Words mean things. They like that name because they can dominate us through the vote. The Dominion vote system, to steal our vote from us, steal our country from us, one congressman at a time, one senator at a time, one judicial appointment at a time, till you can't get it back because it's a huge ship. You can't turn this thing around. You're headed for the rocks and nothing can stop you. You haven't got control of the helm of the ship. And finally, they get a different captain in there, and they're going to, take us on the rocks for sure. The reality is that no individual state is capable of doing this. Look what Texas tried to do in protesting. The Dominion machine, when Texas looked at the Dominion vote counting machine, they had an internal finding, and I think it was like 170 pages or something, where they wrote this scathing report looking at the Dominion vote machine and said that, the thing was designed for a fraudulent vote, that every aspect of the machine was designed to allow a corrupt vote to get through. That there was no aspect of it that was trustworthy. And so they said, not on your life, Texas isn't allowing Dominion machines to be used in Texas elections. Well, who wanted that Dominion machine in there? What elected official wanted, and groups of officials wanted, that Dominion machine in Texas? And why would any real citizen looking for a fair and honest vote want a machine that was so fragile, as they said in the report there in Texas, so easily perverted in the vote? You had 10 and 12-year-old kids going in there and changing the vote in the machine, remotely. So the machine wasn't robust at all. And then who's saying, no, it's robust, it's okay? What other states, how in these other states was Texas able to come up with a 170-page report outlining how fragile and susceptible to vote fraud the Dominion system was, but none of these other states saw the same thing? Are you serious? Seriously. And who was behind getting the machines in those places that didn't want to see that? People that wanted to be able to manipulate and control the vote because they wanted an outcome other than what the people in their area would want, would vote for, would agree to. Why? Because they wanted to steal the community, steal the tax dollars, steal the legislation, so they could control the locals against their own best wishes and interests, by stealing the vote and putting players in that would do their bidding, their will, against the desires of the local people. And that happened out across the whole nation. And you didn't even have to get the Dominion system in Texas only. It just had to be a couple of vulnerable places, and the whole country, and now the whole world, is left with the consequences of a frauded vote in certain small jurisdictions, a handful of states, where they were able to get it through and tweak the vote far enough to throw the whole election off. And then, because the local officials at the state level couldn't turn back the vote, there couldn't be a lawful action to flip it over because the courts wouldn't let you do something in a federal election from the local level. And because the judges blocked action, the real merits of the validity of the vote haven't been heard, only standing. All these cases that were denied to go forward through the courts, it was standing that was the common theme. They'd say, well, you don't really have the legal right to make a claim here. You're not the aggrieved party. So the court's not going to hear your case because you're not directly affected here or there. And so they just kept shutting cases down. It's like the birth certificate with Obama. The merits of whether or not the birth certificate was real or not were never actually decided by a court. Only the standing of the people bringing the cases was ever decided. So we haven't actually had, people have this common perception that the birth certificate issue is settled and done and taken care of. No, it wasn't. It was never decided. It was just that the parties that kept coming in and fussing and stewing, the court said, well, you don't have standing, you don't have a right to say anything here, it's not your business, go away. And the merits of whether that fraudulent document was real or fake or what it meant was never actually decided by a court. Even though people raised the issue, the courts didn't settle the matter based on those issues. They settled it on, well, you don't have, a place to make an argument. So the American citizens and Texas itself, when it says, hey, these other states, they're trying to manipulate the federal vote and get an outcome that's against the interests of Texas, and all these other states join in Texas, and we're going to fight this together. And the courts said, well, we don't think you have a case against this other state, and you can't join the Texas lawsuit, and so it's divide and conquer. And then, yeah, there's no case here because you don't have standing to raise such a claim. The vote itself, the legitimacy of the vote, wasn't argued in time to stop this swearing in. Now, to get precisely to the question you just asked me, what's the role of the military in this situation today? If America has been captured by enemies domestic, the Al Capones, if Chicago is now not just running Chicago, but running the whole country, well, it's an internal problem. Police are used internally. Military is to foreign enemies. We don't use, with the Posse Comitatus laws, we don't use the military against American citizens, except in certain very limited situations. If a foreign enemy has breached the wall, has got to a certain point, and then the nation, the republic, the Constitution is under threat, and the policing is not capable of repulsing that threat, of protecting the citizenry, the military can be used under, guard rules and governors, etc., against a threat, be it a natural disaster or an invading army, such as what's about to happen down on the Mexican-Texas border. Mexican-Arizona border, Mexican-California border, with all these immigrants coming up from Guatemala right now. With an external threat, now the military can have to take action. But let's think about, it's not just what's happened in the vote machines inside of America. Where was the threat originally? President Trump, when he was still candidate Trump, before he won in 2016 and then took office in 2017, he was attacked. He was attacked by British intelligence and by a banking cartel working out of the city of London with a false dossier saying that the Russians had compromised Trump in his business dealings, and then were promoting him to become president of the United States, and secretly attacking people that were enemies of Trump in his campaign so that he could become the victor in the election here in America. And then that the Russians, by controlling Trump with this secret sex tapes, this secret knowledge of what he did with prostitutes in Russia, pissing on the bed that Obama had slept in, and all of this nefarious stuff, that the Russians had some leverage over President Trump and could use it to get Trump to do things in a way that favored Russia. And so this Russian dossier was put together by these foreign entities with foreign interests outside the United States in the city of London, the banking city, against candidate Trump. And by the way, that piece of shit, that lying piece of shit Halper, Halper is the guy, he worked in the Reagan administration. He was essentially a spy inside the Reagan administration for George H.W. Bush, former head of CIA before he became vice president. And what you haven't heard, except probably from me, is that he was the banking side of Iran-Contra. He's the unindicted co-conspirator on Iran-Contra. The money and gun running operation, which President Reagan said happened under his watch, but was not fully understood or known by him, but he had to take responsibility for it when he did his national press conference out of the Oval Office. Who was actually running that? That was George H.W. Bush, former head of CIA. And the banker on Iran-Contra was Halper. Well, because Halper was an unnamed co-conspirator, unindicted co-conspirator during Iran-Contra, he skates free. Where does he go? He goes over to London. And then he gets dual British citizenship, not just U.S., but dual British citizenship. And he's a professor at Cambridge. And from Cambridge, he's also providing advisory role, serving an advisory role to Department of Defense here in the U.S. and looking at foreign policy and all sorts of stuff, getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars from the U.S. government for his advisory role. And what did Halper do? He's the one that came up with the plot to try to use a honeypot, a young female, to entice George Papadopoulos to betray his wife and become, complicit in some spying activity and taint President-elect or at that time candidate Trump on Russian collusion and to paint a picture of him that wasn't true. Halper came up with that plot. Halper is the one that was behind the scenes manipulating the ideas of creating the idea of a Russian collusion project with Trump to get Trump elected, that he was sold out to Russian masters. He came up with that whole lying scam on foreign soil. This is a person with both American and British citizenship because he moved over there to Cambridge after he escaped any kind of exposure during Iran-Contra. And so he's still a threat. When Ollie North and Fawn Hall were destroying records and spiriting them out of the White House in her boots and bra, the records related to the banking, the money, which wasn't ever really raised in Iran-Contra. If you go to the war or the Tower Commission report, doesn't go into those details very far. Why? Because you found Halper there. So Halper survived all of that. And he's still out there loose. He's a missile looking for the next target and getting paid by people inside our government to keep him viable and credible with his job, and getting paid by British MI6 to keep him viable. And then at the critical moment when they need him to help take down a person that might be a threat to their machine, their system, he's paid off and he comes in, tries to become part of the Trump campaign, tries to become an advisor in the incoming Trump administration, tries to take out various officials, just like Flynn, taking down Flynn because he's a threat to them because he knows where all the bodies are buried. So what happens is these are foreign individuals coming together in an intelligence operation, MI6, their equivalent to our CIA, MI5, their equivalent to our FBI, Italian intelligence operatives and facilities where the vote was being cooked and managed by Brit operatives also that were down there in Italy, and NATO allies using Italian and NATO facilities to move the data through satellite systems and into the American system through Canada. All of this work that was being done, that's an external threat. That is a war by another means. It's not a ship on the sea with guns blazing, blasting Volkswagens into America and blowing up buildings 3,000 miles an hour through the air. It's not aircraft. It's not tanks. It's a digital war to capture the flag of your country, to capture control of your country by deciding which leaders get to be in charge. Not the leaders that the American people would vote, but the leaders that these foreign manipulators would vote in to capture a country in a militarized, digital, war by another means operation. And that's what happened here. The military, the U.S. military, is it supposed to defend America? If the policing action, if Congress, if the courts can't be made to protect